Hello, hello. We're about to get started. Hi, Teresa. Oh, I think you're muted still.
Okay, how about now?
You're here.
Perfect. Okay, how's the audio? I have a new headset.
It's pretty good. We're streaming live.
Okay.
But I think it's good. Everybody, we're doing a bit of live tech testing, which is awesome because we've also got a baby in play, but I think it's good. It's a little bit, it's very sensitive. Like it's picking up a bit of movement, but it's okay. I'll let you know.
Okay. If for some reason it isn't great, I'll just turn off the Bluetooth and
Okay.
go with my phone
Perfect.
speaker.
Perfect. I know a little bit early, but we'll get started. Oh, I see Patty's coming in. That's lovely. Patty's such a cheerleader. We'll introduce Teresa in just a second. I have a new layout here. It's really interesting. I kind of like it.
I'm on the phone today, so everything looks the same as it did last week.
You're doing some rocking. I love it. I find that I can't fully quite get rid of my rocking in situations. Sometimes I just want to rock to the left and to the right. Hey, Patty, thank you for joining us. Okay, we are, as I said, we're a tad early, but let's get started. I will introduce Teresa, and hopefully you will have all gotten your workbooks by email, but I will also share the questions in the chat. So perfect. So our guest speaker today is a recent graduate of the MoMBA program, and we miss her so much already, your wonderful spirit and your sense of humor. It's Teresa Storch. She is a professional engineer, and her degree is in mechanical engineering from the University of Alberta. She started her career in aviation before moving into the energy sector. She spent 8 years as a site-based engineer working in heavy oil, and her last 5 years have been in corporate asset management role at a midstream company. She has held a variety of roles throughout her career, including maintenance, turnaround, reliability engineer, and team lead. And in her current role, Teresa drives focus and efficiency in operations and maintenance through implementing processes to manage risk, increase profitability, and improve safety. She's been married to her husband for 16 years. They have an adventurous, I guess it must be about 3-year-old right now. And the bio had, they are welcoming their baby number 2 in June. They have welcomed their second baby in June. So welcome, Teresa. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Kenya. Yeah, I've got 2 boys. Like you're correct. Ellis is 3, and Zach is just 4 months old now. So we're in the thick of it. I'm rocking the headband today for the postpartum hair loss. It's real.
Boy, sending you a hug for that. It's never fun to just experience all those radical changes that sneak up on you out of, well, kind of seemingly out of nowhere, right?
So true.
Yes. So thank you so much for joining us for our last bonus session. Also today, if you are watching the meeting, it's your last time in this year that you can grab some special bonuses to apply for the MoMBA program. Patty always cheers on and says she highly recommends the 2 bonus months, right? So today is the last day for you to apply for the program and to get those 2 bonus months in the program. And Teresa will talk to us about some of her most important realizations as she's been working on her mindset in the last year and continues to do so, right? And yeah, I think for those of you tuning in at this point, you've heard my introduction a couple of times, you know me, but if you don't, I've been running Pros and Babes for 6 years now. I have 2 kids. I'm expecting another baby. So it's going to be a first baby girl. So that's exciting news. I think this is the first time I've shared it live in a workshop, but it's been a journey for me too, I mean, it wasn't certain in the beginning. And so it's taken me some time to share it outside of my closer circles, I guess. But yes, we'll be welcoming a baby girl for the first time in our family. And I've been running Pros and Babes since I've had my kids, bridging the gap in the women in leadership world, adding mothers to the conversation because we're kind of left out of this whole conversation on leadership. So Teresa, one of your key takeaways, you talked about focusing on your needs, which has been huge, like an huge mindset shift underpinning everything. So can we talk about how your life has changed since you've decided to focus on your needs as a woman, as a professional, as a mother? You know, walk us through the journey and how this was not just the snap of fingers, but it was like quite a bit for you to simmer, marinate, reflect, take action, make changes in your life.
Yeah, absolutely. So maybe to give a bit of context, like of course, my oldest son is 3. So my entry into motherhood happened during COVID. So, prior to that, you know, able to do whatever you want. And then, having a baby, and then simultaneously we're in a pandemic, things are locked down. And it was a blessing and a curse, that we had nowhere to be. There's nowhere to go, there's nowhere to be, there's no company coming to visit. But then also there's no support coming to visit either. And so it was a very strange time, for anyone who maybe had their first before COVID and then had to juggle, childcare struggles and those kind of things. You at least had that barometer of like how strange it was to be a mom again, to have a baby again, and to juggle kids in the pandemic sense. But for myself, I was entering all of that in the midst of the pandemic. And so for that full year of being off, it was very, we're not going anywhere, we're not doing anything. Baby and I are just at home, we're chilling, we're doing contact naps, no big thing. But one of the big downsides to that is it really was all about the baby. We didn't have any support. Nobody was coming over to help. Nobody was holding the baby so I could go do something. It was me and the baby. Hubby still had to go to work. He was a mechanic at the time. He wasn't able to do any kind of work from home. So he was out in the world. We were at home. And so then I went back to work. Thank goodness, childcare was all readily available. And because so many folks were still working from home, we were able to find childcare, which was great. So that was all right. And I sort of, get back into that work groove, and it's, the full on 5 days a week, and little guys in childcare full time. And it was still very much, cue the mom guilt, right? I feel guilty because I'm working. I feel guilty because I'm not with my little guy. So either I was full on at work or I was full on at home. And throughout all of that, starting to feel the burnout, and never fully having those moments of like, oh, hey, I have needs, I have wants, and that's okay. And I need to take care of those. I really, not only was I not ready to acknowledge that, or maybe I was ready, but I couldn't do it. I really struggled to say like, oh, I need some time. I need a little bit of space where nobody else is asking for something from me. I need to, the closest thing I got, I think, was sort of just before I went back to the office, where it was, because we were going to go into the office for a few days a week when I first got back. We ended up not doing that. We ended up staying home, but I had my mom come and watch my little guy for a couple of days so I could go buy pants that fit, right? The post maternity return to work, trying to get a bit of a wardrobe that would work for me. That was like the closest thing that I had to acknowledging that I needed something and then getting some help and implementing, which is kind of scary when you think about all the needs you actually have that kind of go unexpressed during all of that time. And so, yeah, when I joined the MoMBA program, one of the really big kind of underpinning shifts for me was actually going, wait a minute, not only do I have wants and needs, which is totally normal and totally okay, but also I should be trying to get those filled somehow, at least some of them. Like, pick your priority items. And so whether that's going for a little walk, adding in some movement to your day, whether that's, eating something really nourishing for your body, or whether that's a bit of time or space, or, visit with a girlfriend, or, chatting with someone, or any of those kind of things, just figuring out how to add that into my day and making some space for myself. That was a huge change. And I really struggled. It actually, going through all of that, kind of opened up some underlying, like, sort of self-worth issues, if you will, but that's sort of like, I am worthy of taking that time and I don't have to sacrifice, right? There's a big narrative out there about like motherhood is all about sacrifice. and that you can kind of lose yourself in being a mother. And it took a lot to kind of get out of that headspace and say, okay, yeah, but I'm also a person and I need things. And how do I actually take care of that?
Was it a hard process or an easy process to acknowledge and be comfortable with having needs and then talking about them?
I think it was really hard. And for myself, so I'm quite an introvert, so I stew on things in my head for quite a while. And so for me, I think, Kenya, when you and I talked early on, I was like, I have brain soup. Like, it's just, there's so much going on in here. It was a lot for me, just like mentally to kind of get my head around and get figured out. And then also adding on that layer of, okay, now I've got it in my head. Now I have to like say it out loud, or I have to find the childcare, or I have to, say to my husband, like, hey, like, tub time is yours tonight. So I have 15 minutes to like do this thing for myself. And just kind of working around all of that. And yeah, it was tough. For me, it was a two-parter, because it was tough to like get through all that mindset stuff just in my own head, and then actually articulating what I need to someone else.
So before you joined this community, the MoMBA program, the learning experience, how many role models did you have of women engineers who had given birth and navigated this season of life?
That's a great question. Of course, mechanical engineer. I spent a lot of years at an operating site. Most of my coworkers, leaders, mentors, and otherwise, were men. And I did have some tremendously great male mentors. I have one in particular who was wonderful about advocating for women. But he's a dad, right? He didn't go through maternity leave. He didn't go through being a mom, or any of those sort of unique experiences of being a working mom. And so really, honestly, there's only, a handful of women I worked with anyway. And then really there's like one mom who's also an engineer, who was in a leadership position that I can really think of, that like, I kind of looked at her and was like, this is a template for maybe and of course her kids were older when I met her. They were already kind of well into elementary school when I met her. But she was one that you're sort of able to look at her and be like, I think your life looks like something I would want, or something I would want to try and copy or emulate. But that was it in all of my years, and in hundreds of coworkers and close connections. One, like, isn't that crazy?
I mean, is the statistic something like, is it 14 or 19% of practicing women engineers in Canada? Something like that. There were it was under 20% for sure. So why is it, and that's a good segue to our question about personal branding. Why is it important for STEM mothers, STEM women to share their stories, their experiences, reflect on their values, reflect on their vision of what they would like their world to look like and the world they want to create, to share her experience of growing life? And then, well, you just talked about it at the beginning of our experience, like my headband for postpartum hair loss. That is just one tiny piece of everything else that changes with our body, that impacts our emotions, our perspective of the world, all of that, right?
Yeah.
So why is it important for us to have this space, have a platform, come forth with our ideas, come forth with our vision, with our needs, and not simply follow the mold of what was paved before, especially in the engineering industry that has roots in the military, really, right? So it wasn't designed by mothers, but now today there are more and more mothers who are also engineers. And why do we need to figure out what is happening inside, and not just based on maybe one template that you see out there?
I think, in my perspective, it's two things. I think there's the obvious of like role modeling, right? That we've got, other sorry, he's been napping for a while. I'm hoping he's gonna hang in there for a bit yet. But if you suddenly see the ceiling fan, it's because he needs to come out and have a snack.
All good.
I think it's two separate things. I think there's role modeling for other women around us, right? That camaraderie of other moms that are going through it. Whether it's sharing ideas or just empathy or any of those kind of things. There's role modeling for the younger crowd that's coming in behind us, right? So helping them to understand that working motherhood is very much an option, and it's very workable, and that you're allowed to have needs can get met. There's options. You can outsource things, like just kind of role modeling and teaching them that there is a way to make this happen. And then I think the piece that sometimes we overlook a little bit, because it often feels a bit uncomfortable, is also advocating for yourself and what you need with your male colleagues as well, and showing them, and even with them, it's always a bit funny because I have lots of male counterparts who have wives, who are often not engineers. But even like I've got one young fella, he's a millwright by trade, rotating equipment specialist kind of a role now. So he's on the technical team, and does quite a bit of overtime. And so every time I talk to him, we talk about work stuff, and then I end up saying to him, like, Brandon, how are the wife and kids doing? And what are you doing working so much overtime? What are you doing to help your wife at home? How are you giving her a break? And so challenging him, even though she's not an engineer, she does work outside the home part-time, but just challenging him to think, right? To think about how is he supporting at home? And, it's not just about going out and getting the paycheck, and thinking about what he's doing for his partner, and not just, I think it's really easy when men are talking to other men, even if they're dads, to just sort of, rah, bringing home the bacon, we're working hard, we're doing our bit. I think that's a really easy narrative to just carry forward, and they forget about how much more there is going on at home. And so I think that's a big part of it too, is just bringing that message forward, that there's a lot of moving pieces at home, and wait a minute, why am I carrying all of this mental load? All of that, a lot more of the domestic labor statistically. Why am I carrying the mental load and the emotional load for my family? And looking at your male coworker across the table and being like, and your wife is probably doing the same thing for you. Aren't you fortunate? And how are you helping out more at home? And challenging them to kind of step it up. I think that's really important.
Yes. I love how you phrased it, Teresa. And I think here in this community, I mean, the program is called the MoMBA. Patty, you asked me, people have been asking, is there a dad BA, right? We are only having part of the conversation here. We've had workshops that speak to caregivers and dads and things like that. But let's be real here. Unless our partners, for those of us who have partners, for those who don't have partners, it's also a separate conversation. I think there are additional considerations, right? But let's say for those who are partners and there's two careers and the kids are full-time with two partners, is unless those partners do take something of a step back from their professional lives and need to step up at home, otherwise there's only so far we can go. I think here in this community, we want to first empower women to reflect more on their journey, their values, their vision, feel more confident in the workplace, right? Advance the way they want to, build the worlds they want to, but that is honestly only part of the equation, right? So that's what we're addressing here. Certainly, though, we need to be stronger inside to advocate more and angle for those positions of power. Power play, power is, I mean, it's politics. It's we have to feel like we can deal with the punches of that game, right? And if we don't know what our values are, what we're building, it's going to be hard to play that game. The higher you go, the more vicious it gets. Like, I'm not going to sugarcoat it. There's more competition for fewer roles, right? And you might be competing with people who have not taken a step back to care for others. And so it forces you to, you have to be stronger, move faster. That's not the narrative I would like for my kids to hear. I think I would like to hear partners taking a more like equitable share of caregiving, plus it builds stronger bonds with the kids too, right, where they have access to both parents, but that we have a ways to go. These conversations are just starting in organizations. A few organizations have incentivized parental leave for men, and so that's starting to turn the needle, but like until that happens, we can only get so far. I think in a community like this, we can advance and we can do so much and improve our quality of life. But without that additional piece, we will stall. And that's a deeper philosophical reflection. I love having those before my husband has coffee. He says, all right, Kenya, are we debating the state of liberalism today? Right. So, but it's a deeper conversation about what kind of society we're building. And when both parents work outside of the home, that creates additional like ripple effects in the community as well, right? Because right, and even if you hire and if you outsource, there's still, we want to be present in our schools and shaping the values of our communities. Like, where do you find that time? You have to ruthlessly prioritize in your seasons. And I hope our kids push the conversation even further and co-create something even better than we're scratching the surface with. That was Kenya's philosophy, society design moment. Okay.
Oh, no,
go ahead.
I just sorry. I'm gonna pile on for a minute, Kenya, because there was something this really stuck with me. There was something that you had said in a session where I was like, oh, it was one of those oh damn moments where you're like, oh, bringing in the big thoughts. We were talking about outsourcing, and it's like, oh, like it's easy, it's relatively simple to outsource someone to clean your house, right? Somebody else can wash the toilets, right? That's relatively easy to outsource. Something like a bit of babysitting here and there, we do outsource to daycare so that we can go to work. Outsourcing some quality childcare like that is an option. But one of the things you cannot outsource is teaching your kids your values, right? Teaching your kids values is not something that you're going to want to outsource, right? You want to teach them the values of your family. And you can extend that too, right? That like,
yes,
there's certain life skills you want to teach them and all these kind of things, but that's exactly right. So then how do you, and that starts small with just one-on-one time with your kids. I mean, small is a big thing. It's one-on-one time with your kids and activities that you do together. But then as they get older and they're, and in other groups and other activities and things, maybe it's volunteering. Maybe it's being a part of some stuff at their school, right? Maybe it's being part of brownies or scouts, or, if there's an organization that you want to be involved with that also kind of shares your values and helps you to share that with your kids. Like,
I'm seeing a request for a snack.
I think we're waking up.
Yes.
But yeah,
we can chat with a fan if you want, and like do what you need to do, and I'll ask the fan the questions and you can respond.
you're gonna chat with a fan for a moment. Yeah.
That's totally fine.
I can still hear you though.
Absolutely. Okay. So have you finished? Yes. So the organizations, I mean, there are organizations that can help us teach kids the values we want to teach them, but you have to be really aware whether you're part of a church. Patty talks, you talk about how you get a lot of support from your church. You live far away from your family, you have 4 kids, and you get tons of support there, right? And there's significant values alignment there, right? Maybe it's like you mentioned, the scouts or the community league, however, whatever it is, but you still have to have a consciousness of values alignment, and you can't completely kind of be like, here, take my kid, teach them everything, I will have no critical thinking involved. That part is, I would say, the hardest. That's really hard, and it takes emotional effort, intellectual effort, getting on the same page with your partner. Many people have a certain level of values alignment with their partners, but you come with different baggage to the relationship. And so there can be different approaches to discipline, right? Or how patient you are, how you teach your kids things. So, and it takes consistency and repetition, which is, when it comes to repeating things, not my favorite thing to do. Thank goodness my husband is a teacher, and repetition is something he does all day long. But then again, well, if you want to do that all day, all evening long at home, right? So that's the harder work. That's the harder work of knowing your values, your vision. And then because our generation is so different than the previous generation, we can just simply absorb the lifestyle and the values of the previous generation, like in a cookie cutter form. No, we have to have that reflection, and motherhood drastically changes that. So that brings into our next question, is how has your personal branding journey transformed your experience of being a STEM mom? As a shortcut, for those of you who wonder what a personal brand is, essentially it's what people say about you behind closed doors. So I had an interesting conversation today with a senior DEI representative, and she told me that one of the most common things she heard that were still overtly said not that long ago in a setting, just not gonna mention the details, but should we hire this person? They might get pregnant soon, right? So, and she said that other categories of people weren't singled out like that, but that is a single thing that was still said very openly. And that's a field that requires a lot of education, very competitive. And but that is like accepted as a normal conversation to have in hiring circles still, right? Yeah. So unfortunately, motherhood doesn't come with the best professional brand by default. Some circles are better than others, but it is still perceived as a liability in many professional circles. So knowing what we know, knowing about, that's called maternal wall bias, knowing what we know, how do we become more strategic in terms of shaping our personal brand? And there's not a one size fits all. It depends a lot about the size of, with the size of your organization, your professional aspirations, what you want to be known for, the impact you want to make in the world. But it starts with your values. Like to build a strong personal brand, you need to be clear on your values, and you need to communicate that the vision that aligns with those values consistently, right? And frequently and continuously. So how has your personal branding journey transformed your experience of being a STEM mom? We have a full module dedicated to that. It is one of those secret tools that women have used to get promoted over and over again during or after maternity leave by building a strong personal brand, right? Tell us about yours, Teresa.
Okay. I'm going to tell you two pieces. The first is one of the big, when we were working through the module, one of the big reflections that I had, because I'm the very typical, like, I just show up and I work hard and I do my thing and I go home and I'll be known for my work, right? I'm one of those people. And so as we worked through the module, I had a lot of reflection about what do I bring to the table that's different from my coworkers, and that's maybe different from other folks that would be out there on the job market. Like, why that kind of concept, like, why would you hire me and not someone else? So I had a lot of reflection about that. I had never previously thought about that. Some of the things that have come out for me are those things, like, especially as a female in a male dominated industry, I can be quite disarming at times. I can say things that other people can't say. I can challenge people on things and be very non-threatening about it. And so that's been a real game changer, to kind of realize that special talent and then kind of leaning into it, and leveraging it more. I had a couple of success stories at work, actually, kind of just in the last couple of months before I went off on mat leave, that were entirely because I was leaning in on challenging people, and asking some tough questions in very sort of innocent, disarming sort of ways. Hi, buddy. The other thing that was really interesting for me as we worked through that personal branding module was that I had worked for a very large oil and gas company for about 8 years on an operating site. I'd held multiple roles, had lots of mentors, a couple of sponsors, right? Like I was, just by nature of showing up and knowing people and being around for a long time, and being really invested in progressing my career, I had a fantastic network, and I had people that would speak up for me when I wasn't there. When I moved, I ended up moving we very strategically. I wanted to get away from an operating site. We knew we wanted to start having a family. And so we changed cities, changed companies, uprooted everything. And in doing that, I lost the vast majority of that network that I had built, right? Like, I was starting fresh with a new company. And so but also we knew we wanted to start a family. So I really focused on building, building up my kind of reputation, if you will, within my team, that Teresa's a go-getter, Teresa gets things done, all those kind of things. And I didn't focus, this is one thing I did wrong, I didn't focus on networking up the food chain or networking within the larger business. I really just focused on my team and our direct stakeholders and like getting stuff done. And Kenya Kenya comes out with the heavy hitting questions. It was a conversation that Kenya and I were having one day where and I forget exactly how you asked it, but it was basically like who other than your boss or your coworkers, who else knows what you do? Who knows what value you bring in the role that you're doing? And it was one of those moments where I actually felt pretty embarrassed about it. I was like, oh my goodness, nobody. Because I happen to have a boss who doesn't do a lot of advocating for our team in the broader organization by happenstance, and I haven't been doing anything. So, and the organization that my team sits in has changed 3 times in 5 years. And so when I thought about it, I was like, oh my goodness, like I'm going off on mat leave soon, because we were having this conversation a few months ago. I was like, I'm going off on mat leave soon, and my boss knows, but my boss's boss doesn't know. And there's a few people in other parts of the organization that I'm very interested in what they're doing, but I've never told them that. And so it was a great kick in the butt, because then before I went off on mat leave, I was sitting down with people and having some chats. And, the only unfortunate thing is that I hadn't done more of that sooner, or more of that throughout more of my tenure. But it's a good, sort of asterisk for like, hey, when you go back, Teresa, like make sure you're booking those coffee dates and that we're having the chats with people and kind of doing that networking, because what if I want a team lead role in a different part of the company or something like that? Like I need to make that known. I can't just have that conversation once or twice a year with my immediate boss, who is on the retirement track anyway. Like I need to get that out there in the broader organization. And so that was a huge game changer too, with that personal brand of just, you think about not just what are people saying but when they're behind closed doors, who even knows your name? Who's able to speak about you, and what do they know, and what's their level of knowledge? Do they just know that you joined the company and you sit in a chair and you fill a role, like, or can they actually speak about the quality of the work that you do and that special sauce that you bring to things, and how much do they know about you?
Yeah, such important points, Teresa. And I would say for anybody, I know some people reached out to me and asked, oh, is this session going to be recorded? I'm finding a lot of value. And even if you are not at the stage where you have kids yet, right? Or it might, or may not happen for you. Some people may have a family or may not have one in the future, but take control of your personal brand. You have one, whether you like it or not. People are saying things about you, or you are invisible to them. Maybe you're that person who gets things done, but really people who should know about what you do don't know about you. So the first step for you is definitely to know your values. And that's one of the first things you're going to do in the MoMBA program. It can be daunting to figure out your values. I know there are assessments online. We like to bring it into the picture of your family life, truly, right? And because anybody listening to these recordings, at some point, you're going to have some caregiving duties. You're going to have identity changes. And so doing that, hello, sir. Hello, master. Being aware of your values, knowing what value you bring to the table, thinking strategically about who should know, who do you want to influence, who do you want to be talking about you, what are your talking points? Like, you have to curate that in this day and age. That's a very, very important career skill. And again, if you, let's say, I know for some of you are thinking about wanting to bring business to your company, right? And become like adding more value in that sense and bringing revenue. So again, that's going to fit with your values, how they align with your company, the value you bring to the table specifically, and articulating it in a succinct way. There's one personal brand statement that I really liked that was expressed. I think we have this recording about negotiating a raise. It was something like, it was an engineer, and it was clear she was an engineer, but she said something like, I build repeat business through strong relationships, right? And that many women in engineering roles have like the people touch, and they talk about that, building relationships, but how do you show how it affects the bottom line? So if you have a personal branding statement, it's like, I win repeat business through strong relationships. That is it's a very powerful personal brand statement. And then, if we know you're an engineer, we already know that this distinguishes you, right? So that's how you can show how your strength at relationships helps the company make money, because companies need to make money. They need to show the bottom line. Their fiduciary duty is to their shareholders typically, right? So not to their employees. Sorry to break it. It's not like that maybe for co-ops or other structures, but at the end of the day, it's the bottom line that rules. So if you can craft a personal branding statement that shows how you help the company make money and profit, it's going to help in an economy where the market is competitive, right? So,
Yeah.
and as a mother, sorry, the odds are not stacked in our favor in many industries, especially in STEM. So you have to find a way to be so clear on communicating the value of the skills that you've built as a caregiver, your adaptability, project management, juggling things, relationships, negotiation. Embrace that. Make it crystal clear. There is no time for self-deprecation here. You have to love yourself enough and communicate your value in the world. This is a key tough love. So,
I think that's extra important, because there are still male coworkers, ironically, some of which are dads, who think that going off on a year of maternity leave is a quote unquote vacation. Enjoy your vacation because you're not physically at the office working. Like, dude, this is still a job. This is still work.
One of the hardest jobs in the world, and especially when you're doing it the first time with no instruction manual, right? Literally
100%.
building the next generation of people that are going to be hired and building value in this world, if I look at it from an economic perspective. Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want to remind people watching that the perspective I bring about working motherhood is one perspective. You may choose to be make your home your focus, and I completely support that. I think my ideal is for women to be really consciously aware of what they want to do and embrace it, right? Here I'm giving the tough love about the personal brand, because we have to be realistic about the world we still live in. So yeah, it is unfortunate that so much is still on our shoulders. But I don't think we can build a better world unless we know ourselves better, because otherwise we're just going to try to fit in, right? We're going to try to fit in and suppress who we are. Instead, I want us to be strong and aware so we can build it differently. And you can't skip that values and vision part. So, Teresa, I'm not going to hold you much longer, because I know we've got your very patient little guy. Thank you so much for being so patient.
He is pretty patient. The joy of the second child.
As a new mom of two, which key MoMBA program takeaways are you taking into your second maternity leave? Can you tell us about your pre-mindset state of mind and your after mindset work state, which the MoMBA has been instrumental in transforming? The two-part question.
Yes. Okay. Hey, bud. Yeah. He's been really into the eye contact lately. might not be an engineer. He loves his eye contact. Okay, I made some notes for myself on that one, because I wanna reiterate, that kind of before state of like, come into Kenya's program, and you're sort of having these aha moments of, I'm allowed to want something. I'm allowed to need something and like make it happen. Like that, strangely enough, that was a big thing to kind of sort that out. One of the other things I remember, Kenya, you talking about this, and this is more of a second year thing, but I remember Kenya talking about it in one of the sessions, and I was just like, hold on. And it was that question of, how do you want to feel? That was one of those things for me where it was like, hold on, like back this train up. Like, okay, first off, like, getting into parenting a toddler. And so having those reparenting moments of feelings are important, right? All feelings are okay. So going through parenting a toddler with that kind of language, right? And then having those moments of like, oh, it's not just all feelings are okay. It's me being thoughtful about how do I want to feel and actually kind of choosing that. And then, if how I want to feel is very different than how I do feel, what can I do to change that? Can I move the dial? Is there a need, an unmet need maybe that's causing me to feel differently than how I want to? Um, that was kind of a big thing to really piece together. Um, Keeney, I've shared with you before about how it fundamentally changed how we approach things with setting up supports for this mat leave. We kept our cleaner. We got some time with a postpartum doula because I wanted to feel rested and I wanted to feel cared for. Right. And meanwhile, my husband is running a business, right? That he's about 18 months into running. And it's going tremendously well because he's able to put in the time and effort and energy, right? He took 1 week off with us when Zach was born, which was beautiful, and I'm so glad he did that. But it wasn't feasible for him to take more time than that. So
It's
so
very
then
hard
how do
as a
we?
business owner. Like,
Oh, so tough. And
I'm
so
taking a
how do
maternity
we?
slowdown. Sorry, I'm cutting you off here. As an
That's
entrepreneur,
okay.
I'm
No, go
taking a
for it.
maternity leave, like a maternity slowdown. I'm not taking a full maternity leave. And to
Yeah.
be honest, I always did pros and babes with all my babies. It was good for my mental health, right? But yes,
Yeah.
as an entrepreneur, I just want to acknowledge how you can't that easily, and especially in those startup stages where you don't have like a huge team or however.
Yeah.
Shout out, right? Like it's big. They're really hard choices to make because your
Yeah.
business is there to support your family and you want to be there. So like shout out that he took that week. I want to say that. Just
Yeah.
sorry,
Totally.
Teresa.
Oh no, thank you.
Yes.
Um, and we talked about a lot of things as prep for postpartum, especially prep for the early, like, the mind numbing exhaustion. And we talked about like, what if, especially for him, because he's in a bit of an interesting position because not only is he an entrepreneur running a business, but part of him running the business, he does sales, but he's also
Mhm.
driving a big truck around. So it's a mobile tool store. Um, so it's Matco, if anyone's ever heard of them, direct competitor to like Snap-on and Mac. So selling professional tools, but he's driving a big truck around the city of Calgary, right? So you think about safety sensitive positions, right? Like he needs to be mentally sharp. He needs a decent reaction time, right? He can't just be mind numbingly exhausted and like show up and kind of fudge through a day, right? Like he needs to kind of be on it. And so, yeah, we talked about like, okay, I want to feel cared for, but then also how does he want to feel? We know that managing exhaustion is going to be a thing. How do we do that? What is plan B? Getting creative. One of the big, I promise this all loops together. One of the big things that was a big shift for me, coming in and doing that mindset work pre-MoMBA, I had an awful lot of, well, we can't do that because, right? Well, there's no sense in paying a cleaner to come in and clean the house because I can do it, right? It was very, I can't, it's too expensive, right? And shifting from I can't to how can I? And so asking yourself, what would it take to make something happen? Well, wait a minute. The only reason that I can't have a cleaner is because I just don't have one yet. So I just need to find someone good, safe, and reliable to get in to come clean our house. And there you go. We'll try it out. We'll try, right. And having more of like, we'll try it. Nothing is permanent, right? I mean, some small exceptions, but like, you try out a cleaner for a month. If you don't like it, then you move on, right? Like you try out a meal delivery service for a couple of weeks. You don't like it, you cancel, right? Like there's an awful lot of stuff that we lose sight of the reality that it's a season, right? Like kiddo is now 4 months old. Certain things are getting easier. Some things are getting harder, right? It shifts, it changes. there is a season of life when the kids are little where they need you so intensely, so intensely. So asking yourself, how can I, right? How can I do this for 6 months? How can I make this work for me for 1 year? Right? Sprinkling in little things to help yourself. One of the gals, I really can't take credit for this idea. One of the gals I follow on Instagram, who's a mom, who's a very practical mom. She's got 3 kids now. She talks about like, how do you do like a little nice self-care thing for yourself at like bedtime, right? Bedtime's always kind of stressful. Have a nice cup of tea in a travel mug, right? Have a nice beverage with you that you can enjoy and sip on while you're reading stories with your kids. Is that something you could do? Could you do your skincare routine while the kids are in the tub, right? Like just sprinkling in that little stuff. It's really easy to be like, I'm so tired, I'm so stressed, we're so busy, and you just kind of get caught up in that. Well, okay, yes, you're tired and stressed and busy, but how can you sprinkle in little stuff? How can I make that work to take care of myself and take care of my family and all the competing needs, and just making it all happen? So I think that the how can I is one of the biggest shifts that I've had. And funny enough, we think about, personal branding and things you bring to the table and challenging people. I actually directly used the how can I challenge with some coworkers that were having a very, oh, there's no way we can't possibly kind of discussion about something that needed to change, and they were digging their heels in. And I challenged them exactly with that wording. And I said, I hear you guys, and I know this is really difficult, but like, let's step back for a minute and ask ourselves, let's think big, think outside the box. How can I? What would it take? I give you endless resources. I will give you, here's a magic wand, I'll give you anything. How can you make it happen? And just challenging the thought process.
Yes, so important, because every day we have 2 choices. I have 2 choices. I can focus on everything that is not working, like the fruit fly invasion this year, right? I can focus on those, or you're gonna laugh at me, but you know what I was doing yesterday? I was loading the dishwasher and I was thinking my mugs, and I was thinking the thermos for providing my son hot food. Like I'm my own group of support, right? And the leader is really challenging us to take our gratitude practice to the next level. So I've been thinking my hardwood floors, because they're better for my son's allergies and for the people who cut the wood, and for having warm water to wash myself with. We traveled this summer to a place where there were, power outages, and it was lovely, but there's so many things we take for granted. So I can have 2 choices. I can focus on how the fruit flies have won last night, even though I set all the traps, and be really upset about them, and how that one apple that was left on the counter made me lose the battle. Or I can focus on, I get to be alive another day with my husband and my beautiful kids, right? And we get to experience this day together. Sure, you were sick for 5 days and I might be catching your bug, and sure, like my son doesn't have clean pants this morning and there's an argument about the clean ones being uncomfortable. But no, we get to be alive together another day, right? How can we be joyful together? How can we make the most of this morning together? I'll talk about our sleep routine. These days, our kids are in bed by 7. There's a little moon that shows up. We read stories until the moon shows up, and then it's snuggle time. And we have a very pleasant evening routine, and everybody sleeps better. But it's because we did that by design. We realized how important sleep is to us, and having time after the kids are in bed, and having a good morning routine, and then everything flows. And yes, it was supported by Chef's Plate this month. And we laugh about how many potatoes we ate and how much ground meat we ate. But, it just saves us about 10 hours per week to have that, right? While our cleaner couldn't come for a month. So, but we're clear on it. We're clear that family time for us is important. So many people get stuck on, I can't spend that money. And let me tell you, I did the calculations. As an entrepreneur, I figured out how we could live only on my husband's salary, and we don't live a miserable life. So there's ways to get really creative when you track your expenses and you see how much cash we can burn on things that don't really provide value in our lives. Getting support systems in place, right? If you don't have kids yet, like budget for that in your cash flow. Consider a season we're going to hire help. And in fact, if we're really going to be supportive of mothers, these should be things that we should be able to deduct from our income. Businesses get to deduct stuff like that, right? Guys get to go to clubs and deduct meals and booze and entertainment, at least half of it, and cleaning their offices. We should be able to do that too if we're going to build a more equitable economy. We need that help at home if we're going to be the leaders we want to be for our children, right? And not just carry like gazillion loads. That's another question for designing the world. But if we're not empowered and we don't know our needs, we're not going to advocate for it, right? Maybe the next generation of female accountants will lobby for that, a change to the tax code. Good luck. Anyway, please do it. Please do it. Okay. Any other takeaways that you would like to share, Teresa? I am holding you a little bit longer than I promised I would. Anything you would like to share?
Okay. That's okay. Little man's holding in. I think I kind of got through everything. I honestly cannot say enough about the how can I. And I think a big part of the how can I is also around just don't be afraid to outsource. Don't be afraid to outsource and get creative. Get creative with what you can outsource. You know, whether it's paying someone to hem your pants or whether it's like there's bizarre things that you can pay folks to do. You know, depending on where you live, it's a little bit tougher, right? If you're in a smaller community. But sometimes if you get on, you know, a Facebook mommy group, because most even small communities have Facebook mom groups, and put it out there. Hey, I'm looking for somebody that might be able to do ABC. Does anybody know anybody? Right? Ask the question. So you never know. There might be somebody who's willing to do some odd little thing for you, and if you know if you're willing to pay for it, or they might be willing to do it in trade or all kinds of things. That was actually something I had seen once, you know, around building your circle, you know, having a village. You might have capacity in one area where someone else doesn't. And someone has shared a story where they knew a mom from sort of pick up and drop off at school. It was somebody who lived sort of in right in their neighborhood, kids the same age, right? So they sort of casually knew the person. Their kids were a bit older, so like car seats weren't a big issue for them. And she was able to get the other mom, who was a work from home mom, to do some pickups at school in trade for, you know, not trade in kind. So it wasn't like trading off on pickups. She got the other gal to do some school pickups for her in trade for, she went and got cupcakes for the kid's birthday, right? Because she's working in a different part of town, easy peasy, stop by this bakery, grab these cupcakes, you know, no big thing. And so sometimes when we get, again, how can I, right? So chatting with folks, being willing to trade, being willing to put it out there, this is what I'm looking for help with, and just asking folks if they know anybody. It never hurts to ask. It's so hard to ask for help, but it never hurts to ask.
Yes. Many creative ways. If you put on that how can I hat every day, how can I be more grateful? How can I be more joyful? How can I make this work versus I can't because? That's one of the things we track in our accountability form, right? And I often even preempt. And so if you booked a call with me, I will preempt the call with a visualization of where you can be. I'm not going to spend too much time on your problems. I encourage talking to a therapist. Of course, I acknowledge them. I'm there. I offer empathy, but I want you to be in your potential. You have a lot of spaces where you can talk about what's wrong in your life. Those places don't lack. What's missing is a place for you to realize, have a vision for your full potential as a leader of your own life. Whether you're going to be seeking a formal leadership position, when you become a caregiver of a child, or you are by default a leader they're going to follow. And it's the hardest. I notice when I'm in the morning, when I'm tested emotionally by my kids, that's where my leadership is the most tested. I'm supposed to take a deep breath and actually model problem solving, saying like, I can't deal with this right now, right? When you're tired or exhausted, that's where you push to the limit. So Patty gave an example of the mental load. I'm going to go to the last sentence here, right? Contractor saying, see, that's why we married these women. They keep things moving along in our homes, so we don't have to worry about it. So it's an example of these assumptions and these things that we live in a different society right now, right? So again, if you are watching these recordings, if you've been here during our workshops, there's a very good chance you would be a fantastic fit for the program. It's a skill building leadership development program for people who expect to have caregiving duty who are about to have them, but you're going to work on your mindset, define your values, your vision of success, break it down into a roadmap that's manageable. You're going to work with a bunch of experts who know a thing or two about personal branding, about finances and building wealth, about leadership, emotional intelligence, negotiation, right? You're going to give thought to your health through an epigenetics approach, right? You're going to think about what kind of family life you want to have. What are you building in this world? What value are you bringing in this world? You're going to get a lot of accountability, a supportive group of other women who have been there, who are in the trenches with you and who want to build a better world, right? So if you feel like there's more out there for your quality of life between your work and your personal life, if you want more time for yourself, you want to improve your leadership skills at home and at work, you want a stronger personal brand, you want community, accountability, solutions, people who ask you, how can you, versus, this sucks because we do have a little bit of, crying for, of course, we don't lack empathy. And I say this, why now? We only have so many years to shape our lives. The rest of your life starts today. Why would you hold off on the most important project of your life, which is your family life, what you want to build? Why would you let somebody else dictate how you're supposed to live? It's time today to take that action, right? There's no perfect time, by the way, never a perfect time. People are always juggling something. And do you want to be an influential leader in your home and in your community as well? Or do you want to follow? There's nothing wrong. Like if you figure out through the process too, that you want to be the follower of somebody else's vision, that's completely fine too. Like we all have a different calling, right? We can't just all be setting the stage, but you have to have a certain point where you know what you stand for. You don't want to follow the wrong leader either. That's often where there's a disconnect at work because you're not in alignment with the leadership, right? So apply for the MoMBA program. Again, bonus is available until today. You can join me on a call. I will give you some nice, tough love. We'll design that plan for you, that roadmap. I'll ask you curious questions. At a minimum, you'll walk away with a vision for where you're going and your next steps at a minimum, right? Like at worst, if you decide, this woman, I don't want to spend time with her, you'll walk away with a vision of your next steps and feeling more empowered to be you and to be the true you. Thank you so much, Teresa, for being one of our super awesome graduates. It's nice to hear all your takeaways. It's nice to see you and your kiddo thriving here. I'm so glad that you brought him along. And again, everyone, just check your emails for the workbook for today so you can reflect on what Teresa said. And the recordings are available until tonight. And then, yes, well, for me, I guess I'll wrap up by saying, sharing the pregnancy more publicly, it's my third, and there's a lot that's going on in my heart and in my mind about how I'm going to navigate this stage. And so I'll have a little bit of a slowdown, but you are welcome still to join the program. I will be there for my clients with my baby snacking. That's what I've done for the last 6 years. And I will also have wonderful people also stepping in as guest speakers if I can't be there live for you. But the program continues, the support continues, and some of these workshops will resume in the new year when I'm ready, when I feel it's ready, when I get to know this little one and their temperament. So thank you all for joining us. Jacqueline, Marianne, Patty, Teresa, you're so awesome. Jacqueline and Patty, you joined the program in the last enrollment. So it's so fun to work with you. And Jacqueline, I love your stories of how you've been doing your work while nap trapped. This is how we've designed this program so it can be done as a busy caregiver, right? As a busy mom, as a busy parent. And we know your partners are being like brought in the background. It's always a little bit more discreet, but that work is important for them too. We love seeing couples design their values together. And I've also seen single parents doing that work and even having better discussions with their co-parents, right? So kudos to everybody who's showing up for this work, for trusting us, and thank you, Teresa, Patty, again, for doing sessions with us this time around. See you next time. November 1st is Navigating Anxiety as a Working Mother. That's our last workshop of 2023. Holy moly, we're getting close to 2024. That's crazy. That's crazy. So take care, everyone. See you next time. And please tell everybody you know about these workshops who want to build a larger village and change in how we experience work as moms. Bye.